Welcome to the Anxiety Connection. If you've ever struggled with anxiety and are ready to finally get some answers, you've come to the right place. Hi, my name is Wendy Leeds, and I've suffered with anxiety my entire life. Thankfully, I'm also a psychotherapist, and over the years, I've learned a lot about anxiety, where it comes from, and how to manage it. That's what this podcast is all about. So, let's grab a cup of tea and talk about it. We are so lucky today to have an amazing guest. I am so excited. I've been thinking about this and looking forward to this all week. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest here today. Her name is Angela Noelle, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. First of all, I just really appreciate your exuberance and your amazing energy. I just want to acknowledge you for that. And thank you for having me as a guest on your podcast today. So my name is Angela Noelle, as Wendy mentioned, and I am so classically, I was trained as an acupuncturist and a Chinese herbalist, and I had a practice in Boston for 12 years, and I recently closed it at the end of 2020, summer of 2020, because I kind of found my life path, which I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit more later, but I found my life path as a coach, employing my Chinese medicine background, but also bringing on a few other interests and skill sets. And I help struggling solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, just end the struggle so that they can be prosperous and successful. And it has been an amazing transformation to be able to offer this.
So would you like to share the story of how you found your life's work?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to. So let me see, and I know we had a conversation about this recently too, Wendy, where it's, nothing's ever linear. It's always a process of finding yourself and going through all the things, right? All the journeys. Yes. And that's very similar for me. So, when I found acupuncture, I thought, oh my gosh, I love this. I am certainly I don't know that I felt like I was on my life's path, but I certainly enjoyed what I was doing and how I help people. But I would say at the end of 2017, I had this goal in my mind that I really wanted to start working with a business coach, because there was something about the way my life was going and the way my business was going that I felt like something just needs to change, but I didn't know what.
Right.
I was still working in Boston, commuting 45 minutes to an hour in. I wasn't thrilled about that, but there was something beyond the commute. And so I started working with this woman. She did this amazing, compelling post on Facebook, and she was a friend of mine too. And I was so curious. I had to know what this was all about. And then before I knew it, and right around the time I had this goal, it was very subconscious. It was not like a conscious, like she's the one for me.
Right.
I had this coach. So with working with her, I realized that what I really want to do is work online and help people virtually and help people all over the world. And it wasn't planned. I often say I didn't intend or plan on being a coach. It just happened. And since then, it has just felt very, very aligned to be doing this kind of work.
From acupuncturist to coach.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And why is this such a good fit for you, this work?
That's a good question. So I would say a lot of reasons. I think what I was realizing, and I don't remember what the statistic is, but, the idea of having one career for your whole lifetime, I think of my grandparents or even my parents to some degree. My mom was a little different, but they had the same job oftentimes for 40, their whole work life. And for me, I was just finding this even though I love Chinese medicine so much and I still use it theoretically in my coaching practice, I really wanted to go deeper with my clients. I wanted to go deeper, help my clients understand, well, why do you have this back pain? Why do you have these migraines? You know, it might maybe very well be some kind of underlying belief or some kind of out of alignment issue. And that to me is very rewarding, because what I was finding in the practice is, yeah, it's great to be able to help somebody with their back pain, but chances are they're going to come back a few months later with the same issue.
Right. So it's about going deeper.
Yes.
We have this amazing guest today talking about Chinese medicine and coaching, but let's get to the anxiety.
Yes.
Let me ask you, and this is kind of a personal question. Do you deal with anxiety yourself?
I do. Yes, I certainly do. And I'm so glad that you're asking me this, and I'm certainly comfortable talking about it.
Thank you. Thank you. So you have anxiety. And I assume that the clients you have worked with in Chinese medicine and the clients you work with now suffer with anxiety. And what I really want to get to is how you help with your background, people like those of us at the Anxiety Connection who have anxiety.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the Chinese medicine aspect. How does that impact anxiety?
Yeah. So in Chinese medicine, the pattern that we often associate with anxiety, and now it's usually like it can be more than one thing, which is why Chinese medicine is so beautiful, is that it's not one size fits all. There's often two people with anxiety could have two different patterns altogether, but oftentimes the channels or meridians that we have in Chinese medicine that are associated with anxiety is the heart and the liver. And that's often how they present. So if you want, I could be very specific or I could keep it general, but oftentimes that is kind of the underlying issue, is that they need some kind of balance.
So how would that help someone who's listening today who's anxious? What could they do? What knowledge could they take from this to help them be less anxious?
Okay. So yeah, as far as, I always recommend if you're somebody who is anxious, that having an acupuncturist can be a very important person in your toolbox, because I mean, when I had my practice, one of the first things that, I mean, I would say 99% of the time, as soon as that first needle went in, when they laid down, the most anxious patient became very, very calm. So, but as far as the disharmonies in the channels that I mentioned, I think it is a good idea to maybe have an idea like, oh, I'm anxious because of some kind of imbalance, and to know that there is a solution for me that may or may not be related to what I'm already doing, or maybe it's a constitutional issue too, because in Chinese medicine, we look at both pieces, which is really important, like nature versus nurture.
Okay, so if you're anxious, one of the things you can do is acupuncture. And I'm a big fan of acupressure, which is exactly the same idea, but you can do it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have a chapter, and I love acupressure. I have a chapter in my book about where to press and how to press. So it's the same idea.
Yes.
Yes. So how else do you address anxiety with your clients?
Yeah. So, oh goodness. Well, I talk about diet quite often, because a lot of times anxiety comes from the result of having some kind of gut imbalance. So from a health standpoint, because I work with clients both, from the Chinese medicine health standpoint, and also I do a lot of mental, like brain set work, spirituality work, etc. So that would be like something that's foundational. Like if there are any kind of suspected gut issues, I would address them right away. And then it's from a standpoint of like brain set, because
well, talk about that. I hadn't heard of brain set.
Brain set, basically it's like mindset, but it's specifically targeting the brain, right? Because and I'm sure you've heard this about, we have the different parts of the brain, right? The mammalian brain, the reptilian brain,
limbic brain, the limbic brain.
Yes,
And
help
then
me out here.
there are three parts. It's the triune brain, the reptile, the limbic, and then the cortex or the thinking brain.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So I often talk about, not maybe a little less scientific, but just address the fact that so often the reason why we feel the way that we do is because of the result of having a repetitive thought pattern, a repetitive thought loop.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Or with it, in the case of anxiety, always looking into the future and worrying about the future. So what the brain part of how I work with clients is I help them recognize that part of them that is saying, oh, there I go again. Like, there I go again. And it's really more about recognizing that, because so often, I was never taught this when I was growing up or in school, like to be aware of my thoughts and my feelings.
For me, they just happened. They were magic.
Yeah.
They happened to me and I had no control.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. But what's the secret? Tell the secret.
The secret is that you are a product of your thoughts and your feelings. And
you're in control. No one else gets to think for you.
Exactly. And that is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up, Wendy, is that that's so much of what I teach, is that we are responsible, right? Not just for when we think of responsibility. Yes. Can we just talk about responsibility?
Yes.
Oftentimes we think of, oh, I'm a responsible person. I pay my rent on time. I pay my bills on time. I pick my kids up on time for school, and I do all the things. But what a lot of people don't realize is that we are also responsible for everything we think and feel. And it's not a matter of saying, don't think this way, or to stop how we genuinely feel and think, because we can't control that. But what we can do is we can do something after the thought has happened or after the emotion has presented itself. We can choose the next step. And so I have a few tools of how I help with my clients with that.
I just want to say something about responsible, and then I want to get to these tools. I always think, because I think the word responsible has a very heavy feeling to it. Oh, I'm responsible. Yes. I like to break it into response, able. I am able to respond. And once you understand that you have the power, it shifts from it's something I have to do, to, I own this. I get to choose my thoughts. I am able and empowered. And for me, with the word responsible is not the icky word that's sometimes it gets a bad rap.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, actually, because I do think that responsibility, that word, or responsible, often we tend to go back to our childhood where our parents are pointing the finger at us.
Yes.
Teachers. You need to be more responsible. And I love how you broke it down, because it's softer. And
it gives you power.
It's powerful.
Yes.
I really, really appreciate that. Can I adopt that from you?
I love to share. I live to share. All right. So back to the tools you use, because I know people are thinking, tell us the tools. How do we work with this?
Yeah. So there's a few things I do. First of all, I recommend meditation. I recommend getting into the silence. So, and those are actually two separate things. Meditation is where, you're sitting and you're allowing your thoughts to come in, and then you have tools to kind of work through them. Whereas silence is just, it's just basically sitting. And I don't know how, I feel like oftentimes when I talk about this, people are like, oh no, I could never do that. But sitting in the silence and just kind of allowing whatever needs to come through. So I don't know if that's clear as to what the two differences are. Meditation is more of a practice. Being in the silence and allowing whatever to come through can be a habit or a practice that can be a very powerful way to create awareness of what your brain is doing up there. So for clients of mine who are like, I just can't decide, or I don't know what to do. They're overwhelmed, right? So many of us women and
with fear. And indecision is about anxiety. I'll make the wrong decision.
Making the wrong decision and just the worry and all the self-doubt. And for people that are just really caught up in that and they're like, what should I do? They're like really focused on the doing. I invite them to be in the silence. And the key word is be and silence, and not taking notes, not walking your dog, not checking your phone, not reading a book. You're just sitting there.
Oh, this is, I can already feel my anxiety. I am so horrible. No, let me change the sentence. I struggle with meditation because I think I'm sitting here, I really need to be doing something else. And then I'm off. I think maybe being silent sounds easier.
Yeah, because you don't have to sit like in one, people think meditation is kind of restrictive. And this is, you can still walk around your home or you can still even walk outside.
Oh, okay.
You're not picking your weeds, you're not doing anything except being, if that makes sense.
So you could take a walk in the woods and be silent.
I would say if you can walk in the woods and know that there is nobody that you're going to encounter and any distractions, but often I recommend that you're kind of in close proximity to your home. So
that makes sense.
Walking outside in your yard.
Yes.
Knowing that you can go back in pretty quickly because the idea is silence.
Silence. Oh, I would love to embrace this. I think this would be helpful to so many people. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to challenge others to give it a try as well.
And I would love to hear how you do, Wendy. And
I will check in.
I just want to mention, because people, who are wondering, the minimum amount of time where it kind of works really well is 4 hours.
Okay.
Because the first hour and a half is like anxiety city. Okay. It's like, oh my God, I said I was going to do this and I didn't do it. It's all the things, right? And then after about 90 minutes, you would be amazed at how much you shift to like this feeling of surrender and, oh, okay, I can do this.
All right. I am going to embrace this and I'm going to meet the challenge. We'll see. 90 minutes. All right. 4 hours. Okay.
4 hours.
All right. How else would you help people deal with this anxiety?
With anxiety.
The other techniques you were talking about.
Yeah. So I think you talk about EFT and tapping, you mentioned, right? In your book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I recommend that. I recommend Chinese herbs or supplements to help calm the mind, and also subconscious reprogramming, which AKA is hypnosis. So oftentimes I recommend for clients just to download. I give them the resources like Hypnosis Downloads, has some really, really great hypnoses that, I think he has like hundreds in his library now where it's like, okay, hypnosis for anxiety about overeating or whatever. Like he has some really specific topics, really great. And it's something that you can do on your own, though sometimes if it's really a deeper rooted issue, I often recommend the client see a hypnotherapist.
I'm a big fan of getting a professional. Hypnosis can one of those things where you want to work with someone, and even with EFT, sometimes tapping, working with a professional is a really smart idea.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially if you've never done it before. I do think and you're feeling anxious about it. I always recommend that being a good idea as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you talk a little bit about boundaries and balance and how that can be useful in dealing with anxiety. Can you share some of that with us?
Oh my gosh, how can I start with boundaries?
Okay. Good. This is going to be great. I'm looking forward to this because I admit I have some issues here, so I'm all ears.
Boundaries, I feel like, where can I even begin? So yes, one of the pillars in my business is energy balance, masculine and feminine energy balance, which, I feel like so much of our energy we can either deplete our energy or replenish our energy or maintain our energy simply by keeping boundaries. And I feel like have learned so much in just 2020 about boundaries, because it's something that I really dove into. So one thing I can say about boundaries, and I can get a little more specific if you'd like, is that boundaries don't need to be something like, oh my gosh, I need to set this boundary, and I need to be angry, and I need to be all these things, right? That we associate with negativity and giving our power away.
That's right.
But
That's right.
it can be a very, and ideally, powerful experience to set a boundary. And you can do it lovingly, you can do it calmly, and it could come down to something as simple as, I'm not comfortable with that right now. Very simple. So whether it's somebody's asking you something that you don't want to talk about, whether it's, somebody in your life that you consider toxic, or you don't, however, you don't want to engage with them or give away too much of your power to them. I am not comfortable with that, or with talking about that right now.
Let's all practice that sentence together.
Yes.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Yes.
Can you explain how they cause anxiety, the lack of boundaries, and how they can heal anxiety?
Oh, okay. All right.
It's so huge. It's so huge.
I'm trying to think of a way to talk about it where it's very simple. Okay. So when we establish boundaries, we are basically saying yes to ourselves. We're saying yes to us. We are saying we matter. And it's not a matter of being rude. It's not a matter of being, what. It's just a matter of us, usually as women, but men, I know men encounter boundary issues too.
Absolutely.
I matter. And it's boundaries could be a matter of self-love, right?
Yes.
Where, self-love is foundational to self-integrity, and staying in integrity, not just with other people, but with ourselves.
With ourselves. And when we're not in integrity, we're anxious.
And when we're not in integrity with keeping those boundaries, we are anxious. Because it's like, oh no, I did that again. And there's all the things that happen as a result, the disappointment, the sadness, the more anxious.
They won't like me. I'm a bad person. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Yes. There you go.
And that really is where anxiety comes from. It comes from the I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can set a boundary, how does that set you free?
Because you're in integrity with who you truly are.
Yes. You honor yourself.
And you're honoring yourself, and you're saying, I matter.
Yes. Yes. And when you stand up for yourself, you stand up and give away, you let go of that anxiety. How do you work with setting boundaries? What was the sentence again? I've got to write that down.
Oh,
I'm not comfortable with that.
I am not comfortable with that right now. And whatever it is, I don't want to talk about. I feel like saying I am not comfortable just softens that a little bit. Instead, if you're not comfortable and you're new to setting boundaries, as opposed to I don't want to talk about that. So I am not comfortable with talking about that. If you're at a party and someone says, oh, when are you going to have kids? Or, oh, whatever. Because
how much do you make? Or what do you weigh?
What do you weigh? Or, so many of these questions that we get asked as women, it's like, what? Inappropriate questions. But yeah, you can just start with that. And I feel like I could go on and on. I mean, that's something that I have recently, just from a personal standpoint, I do that with my husband. I am not comfortable talking about that. I will talk to you when, blah, blah, blah. Like if we're in a heated argument or whatever, I feel like it could be used with your children. It can be used with your boss. It can be used with, your mother-in-law, whoever. How can you argue with that?
And I'm not comfortable doing that. Or I'm not comfortable listening to this, because sometimes, the conversation isn't a place you're comfortable. I'm not, this is not something I want to listen to.
Yes, I am not comfortable listening. And I'm so glad you talked about that, especially because so many of us right now are feeling the effects of world events and people's differing opinions. And that is a really simple, easy tool to employ right away. I am not comfortable talking about this.
And talk about a way to reduce stress and anxiety. I'm not going to talk about it. Yes. I'm not comfortable. That is like my favorite sentence ever.
And just imagine, I invite your listeners to imagine how freeing you're going to feel after saying that, especially if you feel anxious about doing it.
Well, practice it a few times. I think anxiety, practice helps to ease the anxiety. This
Yeah.
is wonderful. So, any other tips for setting boundaries and, balancing your life?
Well, there's also the boundaries that you set. A lot of people, when they think of boundaries, it's similar to the responsibility conversation.
Okay.
They think of boundaries with others, but there's also boundaries with ourselves.
Ooh, talk about that.
Yeah, and this is it's so powerful and something that I really started to learn. And it goes back to the integrity piece. It said, if for people who struggle, like I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of my clients struggle with working too much.
Yes.
Right. And it causes strain in relationships or strain in your health. So I'm going to work until 5 o'clock every day, and maintaining that boundary with yourself. At 5 o'clock, the computer shuts down. I turn everything off and I go, whatever, make dinner, walk the dog, hang out with the kids, hang out with the spouse, partner. And and you stay in integrity when saying, I am going to work out tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
It's a boundary that you, as well as an agreement, right? And a commitment.
Yes. Yes.
But it's a boundary. I am going to work out at 8 o'clock.
So why do we honor the boundaries, the agreements we make with other people, and we blow ourselves off?
Uh-huh.
I always show up at the dentist. I don't miss my appointment, but I blow myself off sometimes. I don't honor those boundaries.
Well, I think it's great that you asked this. Why do we do it? And I think it comes down to lack of self-worth.
Yep. That is the best sentence ever. Well, second best sentence. Not valuing your time, who you are, valuing your body physically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth it. I'm just, my body isn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Honoring yourself.
Yes.
So,
and that is every time you choose to not honor a boundary with yourself. And I'm not saying this in a, to shame, just fact. Every time you break a boundary with yourself, get out of integrity with yourself, you lose more self-worth. So for those of us, so many of us don't have self-worth, have low self-worth.
right.
The only way to build it is to maintain those boundaries, staying in integrity with yourself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera.
And to start small, because I don't know a human being on the planet who doesn't struggle a little bit with this, honoring themselves. Mm-hmm. But it's like a muscle. I think self-empowerment is like a muscle where you just use it a little bit every day and it will get stronger.
Yes, so true. It is a muscle, just like, I think of the people who say, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. Well, it's a practice, right? It's not something that you're born good or bad at. It's just something that we learn, right, from indoctrination to not value ourselves. But it is something that can be built up just like a muscle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can have it, and it is possible.
And it's a choice. It's always a choice.
Yeah.
You can choose to do one little thing today to honor who you are. And maybe you'll do two things tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But it's all about making a powerful choice.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, the answer. So boundaries with others, boundaries with yourself.
Yeah.
I love that.
And to think, I just want to mention one more thing about that. If you don't have the boundaries in place with yourself, it is more difficult to have boundaries with other people because, there's so much right now going, especially with 2020, about self-love. If you don't have that love that you have with yourself and that worth, it's really hard to have that with other people.
It's so true. And I talk about this all the time. Honoring yourself, because every single person showed up on this planet whole and perfect and wonderful. And somehow in the translation, we got convinced otherwise.
Yeah.
I think Cheryl Richardson said, we're all masterpieces. We showed up perfect. And over time, people have been throwing tomatoes and kumquats and splashing all over it. And just, you picture this mess. And when you decide to reclaim your life and walk through, step out of your anxiety, it's about cleaning off the masterpiece that's below there. We
So
are
beautiful.
so beautiful and
Yes.
so fabulous. And every single person we're talking to is gorgeous on the inside.
Yes.
This is about honoring that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Everybody is beautiful and unique, and there is nobody out there like you. And it is a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, because one thing that I talk about a lot is by owning your gifts, you are making an impact in the world. And it doesn't have to be anything like, people are like, I don't have anything, that's, again, it goes down to back to self-worth. I don't have what it takes or whatever. Each and every one of you have what it takes. And that part of you is needed in this world, especially right now. Especially right now, we need the best part of you to represent. And whether you're like an amazing crocheter or an amazing lawyer, it doesn't matter. We need you, and we need the best parts of you right now.
Yes, right now. We've talked before, and you asked me a great question, and I'm just going to steal it and ask everybody. You asked, what is your superpower? And I thought, that is the best question. And I asked you what your superpower was, so we know. But I'm asking everybody listening, what's your superpower?
Yeah, what is your superpower? Everybody has one.
Yes. Yeah. If you don't know, ask your friends or family. They will tell you.
They will tell you. And it's usually, for those that are like, I don't know, and are getting into indecision and overthinking, it's usually the first thing that comes to your mind right away.
That's it. That's it.
Right away.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you, share your superpower.
My superpower is that I am extremely intuitive, and I always have been. And I do think it's a superpower, but I also believe that everybody is intuitive. We are born with the gifts. And when I was little, I can remember having, being guided and looking around me and saying, there's nobody here. Like, I'm playing outside by myself. I was an only child till the age of 7. So there's nobody around, and I'm being guided by, whatever you believe. And I remember one time it was like a voice saying, caution. Like, I was in I don't remember. I think it was like the bathtub. Maybe I was about to fall or, slip and fall in the bathtub. And I remember hearing that. So I don't know how woo your audience is, but I am very intuitive, and I use my intuition to guide me in making decisions now. Like, if it doesn't feel good, I don't do it. I use it in business. I use it with who I talk to, everything. So.
But what I love about this is the word trust.
Yeah.
You trust your intuition. And I think for a lot of anxious people, trust is really difficult.
Yes.
How did you just do it? Or is there a way that you can learn to trust?
Yeah, and it's a work in progress. Again, it's a practice, and trust is very foundational to so many of the ways that we go through life. Whether it's whether we, and I will answer your question, but whether we buy something really special for ourselves or treating ourselves well, it comes down to trust. And what I've learned is it's recognition. Like, oh, I'm not trusting myself. And I have mantras. Going back to some of the tools I mentioned earlier, I envision trust when I'm meditating or doing hypnosis or whatever. But it's basically over and over again, and choosing to trust myself over and over and over. And, oh, I'm out of trust again. Okay, just go back. And that's, if you make a mistake or if you get off course, no big deal. Start over.
I see. That's scary. That's scary. Because you're talking to someone who needs to be perfect at all times. I've discussed it. My listeners know I'm not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on it. It's very hard to trust sometimes.
I understand. I'm a recovering perfectionist myself, so I completely get that. That's why I say it's something I work on every day, and it's not perfect.
And I think it's so important to know that you never reach the end of this journey. It's always a journey, and perfect didn't leave the station this morning. Perfect's not going to show up.
That's great.
Not showing up. We're just not going to be perfect today. Let your friends know, look, not going to be perfect today. You're going to be surprised. Things are going to happen.
Yes.
Part
I
of
love
life.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got to get over ourselves.
I see that connection, right? It's trusting that even though I'm not perfect, I am still perfectly imperfect.
And
Because
it's okay. It's
and it's
okay.
okay.
Yes. Yes. You can make a mistake and be okay. It's hard for us anxious folk, but we'll breathe our way through it.
And breath is so important,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh.
A deep breath it just can change everything. Any other words of advice, anything you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
I think the big theme here, what I'm hearing is that you are worthy and you are valuable and you are needed in this world. And by stepping into your own power, trusting yourself, practicing self-love, practicing, and there's so many great tools out there to practice self-love. You've got this. I mean, I hear of so many heroes out there who talk about their struggle with anxiety or other, mental emotional conditions and how they made it through, right? So, and it is a practice. And we're all like, what did you say, masterpieces in action or masterpieces in the making?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah. We all came out masterpieces and it's all still there. Just have to clean ourselves off and get ready to take on the world.
It is already still there. It's a matter of really discovering who you truly are, isn't it?
And loving and trusting it.
Yeah,
Because you showed up enough. You don't have to be anything other than what you are because what you are is perfect.
that's right.
Yes. Oh, this has been like the best talk. I have so enjoyed this. Now, I know that listeners are going to want to get in touch with you. Could you share all your podcast, all the wonderful things you do?
Of course I will. So the name of my podcast is called the Empowered Warrior Podcast, and it's everywhere podcasts are. So Apple Podcast, iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon. So it's over there. And then the best way to find me online is Instagram at I am Angela Noelle or LinkedIn. And I think it's, I should have looked this up, but it's, if you Google Angela Noelle, prosperity coach, you will find me on LinkedIn.
This has been just a joy, and I have so enjoyed this. I just hope you'll come back again and we can talk more about borders and boundaries and all this. This was just wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate this.
Thank you
and
so much, Wendy.
Until we're all together again, I wish you peace, joy, and love. Thanks so much for being here with us today at the Anxiety Connection. If you'd like to be a part of the Anxiety Connection, we would so love to have you join us. Just subscribe and you're in. It's that easy. Now, if you found today's message helpful in any way, I would be so honored if you'd leave us a review. And if you haven't heard, my new book has been published. It's called Calm and Sense, A Woman's Guide to Living Anxiety-Free. And it's full of tools and techniques you can use to help ease your anxiety, soothe your panic, and create a calm, centered peace in your heart and in your life. If you'd like to learn more about how this book can help you, or grab a copy for yourself, you'll find a link to the book in the show notes or on my website, wendyleeds.com. And if you know someone in your life who's struggling with anxiety, why not pick up a copy for them too? What a thoughtful gift for someone who might be going through a tough time. Thanks again for being here, and I look forward to being together with you real soon.